Hi, my name is Emma Moonier. This is my colleague, Annie Heiderscheit, and we are both on the faculty of Augsburg University in the music therapy program. So today we are here to talk a little bit about using music to foster health and well-being and how that can be done within your own practice and how you can sort of help facilitate that as you're musicking in the community. So, for many, many, many generations and many years, there's been a relationship between music and healing, and between healing and well-being. And music has always been a healing agent throughout history to use and to address, physical and mental health. And we see that across cultures, across the globe. There's research and documentation done on all of those things throughout the ethnomusicology literature. Um, so in ancient Greece, physicians were actually trained as musicians and used flutes and lyres and zithers to heal their patients. And this was true of both physical disorders and disorders of hysteria, which is what they call them within the documentation. But essentially what they were referring to there were mental health difficulties that were being had. And we also all know that rhythm is a huge piece of what happens just within the human body. So the human body has rhythms happening throughout, and those rhythms are important in the way that our physiology all fits together. So we have rates that are important, heart rates, breathing rates. We have brain rhythms that happen. We have digestive rhythms, and then we also have the circadian rhythms that regulate our sleep cycles and how relaxation and rest are sort of navigated within our rhythmic structures. And when the body is stressed, all of these rhythms can increase. And so we know that rhythm is a piece of what we need to pay attention to within physiology. Would you like to say any more about that, Annie?
Yeah, I think the beautiful part is because music has rhythm, and rhythm is the energy in music. And right, if we think about it as the energy in our body, it's what gets us moving. You hear music and you naturally begin moving. So we're using the rhythm in music. Well, we can use it in different ways. We can use it to slow down the rhythms of the body, which is what we do when we are wanting to foster a relaxation response. We use music to slow the rhythms down. And we can use music to speed up rhythms of the body. If you've ever gone to an aerobics class, you hear the music pumping, 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 right? That's designed to get you moving and to increase your heart rate. But we can use music in these different ways to support rhythms in our body. But when we are stressed and anxious, and we're humans, so we experience stress and anxiety, probably more so in the last 2 years than in previous times. And so we can use rhythm, slow rhythms, to slow down the rhythms of our body. And that's called entrainment. It's a natural phenomenon that when our body hears rhythms outside of itself, it naturally wants to synchronize with those rhythms. And our body wants to do that because it is easier for the body to synchronize with it than to be out of sync with it. If you've ever been in a crowd with a group of people clapping to the beat of a piece of music, and one person's like, they're just off, right? And you can just feel, you're like, I just want them to just get on that beat, because it feels better. It feels more comfortable when everything is in sync. And so our body wants to work easier, not harder. So it's going to work to synchronize with those rhythms to make its job easier. Now, we do have a culprit in the process, and those are our thoughts, right? We have 60,000 thoughts a day, and our thoughts can interfere. If you've ever had stressful thoughts or anxious thoughts, right, that can speed up the rhythms of our body. So what we have to do is to work to let go of those thoughts and not let that override what the body is trying to do to synchronize and entrain with these rhythms. So we thought we would take a little time today just to do a short little experience of how do we use rhythm to relax the body. Is that our next slide? I have to we probably look. Oh no, here we go. This is some information about entrainment, which I was just talking about. So entrainment, again, it's going to happen gradually. Typically, the first piece of our body that's going to entrain is going to be our breath. Right, and our breath is I like to think of the breath as a barometer, right? It's an indication of our level of stress and relaxation. When we are relaxed, we take deeper, more shallow breaths, which means we're getting more oxygen into the body. When we get stressed and anxious, our breath gets faster and more shallow. So when we're relaxing, our breathing will begin to slow down. And then it's kind of this domino effect. It's going to go to our heart rate. And then brain waves will happen, and we'll see that process happen gradually. But we're going to do a little experience, and you can get as comfortable as you can in your chair. If you want to put hands in your lap, kind of feet on the floor. When we uncross our legs, it helps our blood pressure to relax a little bit. I'm going to ask Emma to play this lovely buffalo drum for us. It's got a nice, I'll let you play a nice deep sound. Yeah, and if you'll just play like a nice kind of like just a heartbeat sound. I brought a couple Native American flutes. You can get as comfortable as you can in the chair that you're in, and you can close your eyes if you'd like. You can focus on a spot in the room, and what I'd like you just to be able to do is focus on your breath, breathing in as deep as you can, letting that air out, and you may notice some busied or hurried thoughts that are pushing their way in, but just let yourself acknowledge those thoughts and to let them go. And as you take in the sounds of the drum and the sounds of the flute, let your awareness focus on the movement of your breath with each breath that you take in and each breath that you let out. Notice of those thoughts that keep coming up. Acknowledge it. And take your time in letting it go. yourself just take a few more slow, deep breaths, breathing in as deep as you can, letting that air out. As you take those deep breaths, let yourself just notice how it feels to take this time to breathe, to focus on that movement of your breath, and to be in that moment with rhythm. And just give yourself a moment, wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes as you bring your focus back to this room. And when you feel ready, you can just slowly open your eyes. So we used somewhere between 60 to 70 beats a minute there in the music, a nice slow tempo. 60 beats a minute is a good resting heart rate. And what is really interesting is that if you think about lullabies, Brahms' lullaby is 60 beats a minute, right? It's designed to lull, and right, so what we're aiming for is that slower tempo to help slow down the body. And so when we are even looking for music to listen to help relax, we're always looking for music between 60 to 80 beats a minute. If you ever want to, if you want to do some relaxation and want to just check your pulse, a great way to do that is just find your pulse. I like to do a count of, set a 10-second time block on my phone, count the beats that I feel, take that number times 6, it gives you the beats per minute. And so if you're ever just like, oh, how am I feeling? Am I feeling kind of stressed? Am I pretty relaxed? You can do that. And then you could spend a little bit of time listening and go back and check your heart rate and see where it's at. But your body is naturally going to work to entrain with this rhythm. Again, it wants to work smarter and not harder. So it's going to synchronize with the music that's there. Can we go back to that slide with the brain on it? So there's a lot happening. We don't necessarily think about, we often think about when we're relaxing, there's just nothing happening in our brain, but our brain is always busy. But again, we're using these rhythms to kind of slow down every aspect of the body. So that's also our brain waves. Our brain waves, we have 4 different brainwave patterns, and so we're working to get into one of our slower brainwave patterns to kind of slow that part of our body down too. So we're looking for music 60 to 80 beats a minute. It's important that you use music that you like. It's also helpful to give our thoughts a place to focus. So to give our place a focus, and breath is a great place to do that. Because we have 60,000 thoughts a day, right? We have to give ourselves something else to focus on to let go of our thoughts. So, and that's a process we have to practice, of setting our thoughts aside, since we don't have an off switch. I think it'd be great if we did, but we don't. But we can use music to help do that, focus on our breath, let the body synchronize with those rhythms. You could also do some, if you have a lot of muscle tension, do some progressive muscle relaxation, tense and then release those with music at that slow tempo. You could add in some imagery or visualization, focusing on a place where you enjoy being can be another way to shift your focus. This slide is going to tell you a lot of the ways in which music is impacting the brain. But I also want to highlight, if you're looking to use music to improve your sleep, we want music between 40 to 60 beats a minute, because we're working to slow the body down even more when we're going to our deepest sleep cycle, which is our delta rhythm, our slowest brainwave pattern. So we want to get into that deeper sleep cycle, which is important for our body's kind of healing process. But this slide will help to illustrate, and we won't read through all the bullet points for the sake of time, but music is reaching and activates every part of our brain, right? Neurologists and scientists used to believe that there was a music center in the brain, but what we know now through our research and the technology that we're able to utilize in understanding the brain is that every area of the brain responds to music. And so you'll see all of the different ways, right? We can use it to reduce pain, shift patterns around depression, how, again, we're using it in all of these different ways. So music is this great resource and tool that we have to support our body's health, to support our well-being. And we're a little bit biased as music therapists because this is what we do. We use music to support people's health and well-being and to help them heal. So we have a great appreciation for music as this wonderful resource to support healing along the way. You want to talk about our relationship with music?
Absolutely. So each of us has a relationship with music. People in this space probably have a greater relationship with music than your average person walking down the street because we work in music, right? But every person in the world has a relationship with music. And that relationship has quite a bit of complexity to it. So of course we all have these physical responses, some of which we've talked about, but some of which is about cultural context to musical sounds, how we move our bodies with music, what the traditions are around those physical responses. We also have personal experiences. So all of us have those songs that stand out. The song that you share with a significant other that has particular meaning to it. The songs that you sang to your kids as they were growing up or that were sung to you when you were a child. The songs that are associated with particular memories in your life, right? All of us have those road trip songs that were really fun to sing to as we go. And those memories come back when we hear that music. And we also have social connections to music. So music that connects us to other people because of the expression and the experience. Think about what happens when you go to a concert and the artist sings that song that's sort of everybody's favorite, and the whole crowd swells with excitement around that, right? That is a social connection through that expression. And then we also have the emotional piece, how we personally use music to express what we're feeling. How when we hear a song that has lyrics that especially connect to what we are feeling within a particular moment, that expresses it just right, we tap into those emotional centers of the brain. So all of us have relationships with music. Many of these experiences are positive, but we can also have negative or even traumatic experiences with music. Music that was particular to a time in our lives that felt traumatic or harmful in some way. That can also happen. So when we hear music, when we experience music, when we play music, it impacts us in huge ways. A piece of that is what we were talking about a moment ago, that every part of the brain is stimulated by music, and different parts of the brain have different relationships to the musical experiences that we have. But music can also help with developmental pieces. It also helps with the brain's development. It helps with our attachments to other human beings. It can play a role in the way that we learn, in the way that we develop in terms of physical development, in terms of emotional development, in terms of social development spaces. It can foster a relaxation response. I think all of us probably have those musics that we engage in when we want to relax, right? Can you think of what you do for yourself in that space? I think that is always a great piece. I always find myself sort of at the piano playing old Bonnie Raitt tunes when I want to relax myself. I don't know if that resonates for anybody else, but I think we've all got our thing, right, that helps us to relax. It decreases the stress hormones, and that is true within brain, endocrine systems, and within the rest of our body. And fosters the release of dopamine, which is sort of known as a feel-good chemical within our brains. It helps us to release endorphins, and this is especially true in music that stimulates a physical response for us. Dance music, how when the Cupid Shuffle comes on, everybody jumps up, right? It fosters creativity. Oftentimes, listening to music that is created by other people can foster creativity in us. Oftentimes, jumping into spaces of music that we haven't experienced before or haven't been part of before can foster creativity. And this is my favorite, even though it's sort of the biggest mouthful. It fosters neuroplasticity. What we're talking about there is that it can change the organic structure of our brains and the way that electricity moves through that organic structure. So we can use music to assist in all of the developmental tasks that happen around that neuroplasticity and in coping with traumatic experiences. And it increases movement. There we are with the Cupid Shuffle again. Absolutely. You can go ahead to the next slide. So in addition to playing and experiencing music, there are particular impacts that happen within our bodies around singing and the specific science of singing. So when we sing, we release oxytocin. There's been recent research that shows that this is even more so when we sing with others, so group singing. Oxytocin is expressed within our bodies in two other primary ways. The first is in holding behaviors. So whenever we are held by someone in our lives, when we're held as babies, our bodies express oxytocin. And the other is sex. So we can get oxytocin in lots of spaces. Oxytocin is generally known as the love chemical that happens with touch, but we know that we can get it through singing as well. It releases endorphins, which are those chemicals in our bodies that help us to feel good. This is what happens when we exercise as well. It decreases anxiety and blood pressure. And it facilitates expression. There is something uniquely vulnerable and expressive about using our voices to express ourselves. That doesn't feel the same when we're, say, sitting behind a drum set, right? There's something different about the way that singing happens and the way that we have to use our bodies to create that sound. And it fosters a sense of community. How many of us have sung in a choir at some point during our development, right? Mm-hmm. There is that community sense, that feeling of emotion that we get when we hit something just right with the singing and how that resonates through our body. Works really beautifully. You can see across the right side of the screen, we aren't going to go through all of those, but we have lots and lots and lots of very sort of specific physical responses to singing particularly. And then as music therapists, we do a lot of group drumming. And one of the reasons for that is because there are so many impacts on health and wellness of group drumming. Have any of you ever participated in group drumming experiences? Yeah, great. Not you. We'll have to invite you for a drum circle sometime. But what we see when people are involved in group drumming is that they have lower levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. We see increased cell activity, and natural killer cells are cells that are part of the immune system that help us to stave off things that could harm us. We see a decrease in burnout. We see improved mood states. So when folks are feeling angry, depressed, anxious, we can see that those feelings decrease when we drum together. We see improved hematocrit levels. And you can see what we have here are a whole bunch of things that are related to blood health, that are related to immune system health, that are related to health as it is related to oxygenation within our bodies. We see improved anger control. There's a lot about that that I think is just sort of instinctual in what we do when we drum, right? When we give you a big stick and tell you it's okay to express by hitting this particular object, right? There is something about that that is especially expressive in anger control. We see improved school performance in groups of kids and college students who participate in group drumming practice. We see decreases in self-harm for populations that struggle with self-harm, decreased levels of depression, improved self-evaluation and self-concept. So that's how we feel about ourselves. An improvement on interpersonal problems. So we get along better with other people when we're able to drum in groups. We also see decreases in disorientation, and that is true sort of across medical spaces, but also in mental health spaces where we engage in group drumming. One of the things that it's important to point out, I think, at this point is that we're seeing a huge increase across the country in the use of group drumming in AA and NA groups, so 12-step groups. One of the reasons is because they are seeing improved self-esteem, improved interpersonal skills because of that.
And I think when we see all these benefits that come from drumming, right, this release of endorphins and oxytocin, how that can really make us feel better, but right, doing something in a very natural way that doesn't have these potential negative side effects that drug or alcohol use may have. Again, if we're using a substance to alter how we're feeling, right, we can use music to shift mood, and we see all these great positive effects on it. And it's been interesting to see over the last 20 years, the research around group and empowerment drumming has been increasing steadily. So it's been really fascinating to look at the impact of that, and it's gaining momentum. What a question.
Yeah, so when you talked about improved school performance, I think you specifically mentioned college students, right?
Yeah.
My experience with group drumming was in like elementary school, and just we all got drums and we would drum together.
Yeah.
Has there been is there a significant difference between, it's really helpful for college students, and for elementary school students it might be helpful in other ways, or is there a difference between how it benefits people of different ages?
There's not a huge difference in the benefit. There is a difference in the way it needs to be structured, right? For younger kids, we need to structure things in different ways than we do for college students. But there is research at all ends of that spectrum on the use of drumming and the benefits of it. There's a great, fairly recent study, what was it, probably 2015, out of Berkeley College of Music, of group drumming in students who are particularly music majors and not percussionists, right? So folks that were sort of new to drumming and drumming experiences that I thought was really interesting too, related to that.
And the great thing about drumming is it's accessible. Right, so, and it's why we're seeing it being used across so many diverse populations, because drumming is accessible. It's easy for children, older adults, people of all ages to engage in drumming. And it doesn't require to come together and drum together as a group. It doesn't require that we have previous experience or any experience. We can come together and drum, and doesn't mean we have to come in with any particular skill, ability, or experience along the way. And so it makes it a very accessible tool to use, and we're seeing tremendous health benefits from that, which is even better. And most people will say it's really fun. And so why not do something that's fun, that's accessible, and is good for our health? So we're gonna make some music.
Yeah. So what I would love is if everybody would pick an instrument. We've got several options up here. You're more than welcome to choose whatever feels good to you. If you'd like to point one out, I'm happy to bring it to you. Or if you'd like to come up
Explore
and
some things and
try.
see the sounds you like, feel free to come
Yeah.
select.
There are some over here too. Over here, in case anybody would like to get your ocean drum going.
What's the ocean drum?
Yeah, if you flip it over the other way, and then that other surface will give it a little different sound.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah.
I want to say feel it, but I really feel it. I'm Caleb, by the way.
No worries. Can you shake that one?
Is that what I do?
Yeah, let go of that, yep, and shake it. There you go.
It's a thunder drum. Isn't that cool?
This is like throwback to my elementary school. I went to a charter school for kids with disabilities. I went to Fraser Academy when they first started.
Yeah.
I was in that first kindergarten class the first year they opened.
Oh my
And
God.
so we had all of this stuff.
I bet you did.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then I went to schools for middle school and like none of it.
Oh, darn.
Yeah.
Well, now you get to
Here we are.
Yeah. Yes, here we are.
Yeah.
Right, and just, I mean, even as you play around with it, just notice how that feels.
What's this one called?
It's called a caterpillar.
Oh, I like that.
I know.
Can I play with both of these?
Yes, you can.
Okay, cool.
You get to play with whatever you'd like.
Yeah.
Did everybody find something that fits just right? Yes.
And you can also change if you want to. So don't feel like I have this and I can't change it at all. I will say, this is one of my favorites.
I have one of those at home. I have a little one.
Oh my gosh. Well, like this one, right? It's a ginormous right? Listen to that sound. Doesn't that just sound like I can see myself by the lake just like listening to the frogs.
I use it to confuse my budgies.
That's so funny.
So good.
Okay. I'm grabbing it. I'm gonna sit here just so I can
I love it.
break up the sound a little bit. Okay.
I'm sort of composing with my birds, and I'm convulsing and confused with sounds.
Well, there you go.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start us on a beat. I'm going to play the same thing over and over again. And whenever you feel it moving in you, go ahead and join along. And you can play the same thing over and over, or you can play whatever comes to you and feels good within yourself. But we'll start with take a minute to So what do you notice? Do you notice any differences in the way you feel?
I felt my heart changed, I don't know how to describe it. There was nothing like an elevated heartbeat or something.
Excellent.
There's always like excitement, especially, I have sensory processing issues, and so I always go for the things that have like the fun textures, and so there's always like working to make sure like, how do we like control ourselves at different levels when there's the excitement over like, yes, this is good texture.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking the intensity of
Yeah.
all of it down together can be challenging, actually. Yeah. You were really rocking that feather. It is fun, isn't it?
I'm gonna have to get one of my own. I just liked that I could, I felt like I could add some tension or like pull back, that sort of thing. It was fun, you know, and you were like, bring it up to a 10, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You're really cranking it. You know, I also had to put some focus into when you brought it down, small movements, but keep it going.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was interesting.
It's different energies that
Right.
it's taking along the way, so you can feel the energy kind of shifting with kind of each step of the way.
Yeah, it's like I'm inputting different energy and you can very much hear it. It's, I don't know, typically that's what happens to a lot of music. I'm a singer, so like you can hear when I'm putting in more energy.
Yes.
But I think that's more rare with percussion type instruments, because I feel like a timpani sort of situation. I just like that you could, you know, you could hear the energy from something other than myself. I feel like I talked a lot. Sorry.
I liked when I started with this, and you know there were just like beats kind of landing together, and you just feel this almost like a gravitational force just pulling you there to it. Just that power that rhythm has to kind of pull you right to that. So there's just something very grounding about that. Each time I could feel myself kind of landing there with that beat with you. It was just like, it felt very grounding and very comforting, knowing like we're hitting this together. I love that about the experience of those places where you can really feel beats kind of coming together. And then the differences, right? You hear differences and you hear different people doing things, and it's like, oh, I want to hear what other people are doing, and the excitement that brings in the process too, which is always fun.
Do we have any percussionists here?
I'm completely new to music, I just want to be honest. So,
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, it is great.
I think there's something really powerful about all of us entering into a space that isn't necessarily where we live musically, and just allowing the creative spices to sort of flow, right? Because we don't feel like we're trying to get to some musical achievement. We're having a musical experience altogether, and I think sometimes we can forget about that portion of the music as musicians.
And how we connect in the music. You know, right? No words, we're just connecting in the music, which is, it's a beautiful moment. You know, we each come to this with different experience, but we all just connected in that together in that moment, which is lovely. So whether we had music experience or not, we could still all connect in the moment, which is a beautiful thing.
That's awesome. Look we timed it just right. We have 4 minutes for questions. Does anybody have questions?
I was thinking about, you talked about how you would typically want to use preferred music. So what if someone were to typically be like an anxious person, needs help relaxing, that sort of thing, but also only like screamo music? How do you approach some sort of situation like that where it's your preferred music might not be?
Yeah, right. Your preferred music might not be helping you. So there's a couple of things, because we can use music in different ways. So we can use music as a means of distraction, you know. So sometimes we might be feeling very stressed and anxious, and so we might listen to music that can distract us. That it means it can occupy our attention so much so that maybe it's that music that you're like, I grab the hairbrush and I'm singing, and then all of a sudden, like, we're fully encompassed in that moment that anything else that's going on, we're distracted from it. And so when we're using music for distraction, we can use any type of music. When we're literally working to slow down the rhythms of the body, that's when we need music 60 to 80 beats a minute. So if somebody says, but I only like this, so 100 beats a minute screaming, and what's going to happen, that's going to be difficult for the body to slow down to that. So then we might want to talk about, let's see if we can find some music that's at this slower tempo that is going to still be music that you like. So we can also work to expand our preferences. And those are conversations that I have with clients when we're needing music to help slow down the rhythms of the body. Sometimes as a music therapist, I might make that music with the client, we might record it, and then they might use it. Or we might find other pre-recorded music that they could use that they're like, I still like this. That sometimes as I'm thinking about the intention in which I'm going to use it, and that doesn't mean I'm not taking away music. I never want to take away music people love because, right, we have lots of different styles of music that we like. But looking at what do we need from the music to support this kind of process. And if they're really needing some distraction, then I would say then that scream music, that can still be useful to you. If you're working to slow down the rhythms of the body, then we want to make sure we've got music around that 60 to 80 beats a minute. And we could look for music that might encompass more of the qualities of instrumentation, but just at that slower tempo.
When you say body, does that include mind too?
Yes, so our brain. So as we think about our brain, we've got 4 different brainwave patterns, and we're also working, those will entrain with the music as well. So we're working to get into those slower brainwave patterns too, as we're relaxing. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 60 to 80 BPM?
Yep, that's good for relaxation, and then 40 to 60 for sleep.
40, 60, okay.
Yep.
My mind's always like zooming.
Yes.
To slow my thought processes down.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if you've never, oh my gosh, now the name of the group is going to escape me. I'll think of it in a moment, but whenever I listen to their music, it's very kind of ethereal, and I literally feel like my brain just turns to jello. But I have to think about it. I don't have it. It'll come later. Eventually it'll come. Other questions we can answer before, what time is it? If you want to know more just about music therapy in general, there's some websites here. There's also a kind of an introductory book about just music therapy in general. But you can certainly contact us as well if there are more questions that we could answer for you about how to use music for health and healing and well-being, or just about questions about music therapy in general. We're happy to help. We're not far away. Thanks for being here, and thanks for making music with us today. We never get tired of making music with people.
It's true.
We love to have the opportunity to do this. And I will say, during the pandemic, I think my kids and my dog were like, really, can you go find some other people to go make some more music with?
It's getting a little
We've
noisy.
been cooped up with you too long, so it's nice that we can do this together again.
And in the back here, we have some information just in case anybody's interested in learning to be a music therapist.
Or if you know somebody who is, feel free to share. Yeah. And thank you. Thanks for the time. It's great to be here.
Everybody.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
welcome.
Have a great rest of the afternoon.